Howdy, everybody. Today is Monday, November 7th, and the time is 6 p.m. We're here for the joint meeting of the Coppell City Council and the Coppell Independent School District, the Board of Trustees. There is a quorum present with the Coppell City Council, so I'm going to call the meeting to order. Since we are chartered by the state of Texas, you would think that we all have the same rules, but we don't. So Board President David Cavanis is going to do his thing.
Thank you, Mayor West Mays. I will call the special joint meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Coppell Independent School District into session, and with that I will establish a quorum. Present we have Trustee Dr. Nina Biswas, Trustee Lee Walker, Trustee Manish Sethi, Trustee Nicole Bentley, Trustee Anthony Hill, and myself, David Cavanis. So we do have a quorum present, and we are in session.
Thank you very much. Next item is citizens' appearance. Did we have anybody signed up to speak? The City Council has nobody signed up to speak, so I'll turn it over to Chair Cavanis.
Thank you. We have one person signed up to speak on the topic of strategic design, Ms. Jillian Hill. Ms. Hill, where are we having, I forgot to ask where.
Am I heading up there, over there?
How about the open mic?
How about the open mic at the podium? Yep. You can be front and center today.
Can y'all hear me?
I can. One second. So just before you start, we have 3 minutes allotted for each person. Secretary Bentley has some paddles here. When you have 1 minute left, she'll wave that at you, and then when time is up, she'll wave that around at you.
Okay.
Then we'll conclude.
Try to catch my attention with it.
Yep. So if you'll just state your name and address, then when you get done with that, your time will start.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm Jillian Hill, 736 Parkway Boulevard. Okay. I'm one of the families who chose Pinkerton Elementary over my zoned elementary, the same as over 1/3 of our student population at Pinkerton. And I'm speaking to express my concern at the options put forth at the most recent bond steering committee meeting. Choosing an option that would lead to Pinkerton closing would be a grave error on several fronts. At the initial steering committee meeting in September 2022, the committee members were instructed to make their recommendations based on a set of guiding principles. One of those principles is that all options must be trade-up options, and it states that no option will be considered if it does not improve the learning environment for students. Closing Pinkerton will eliminate the IB Primary Years program. No other Coppell elementary schools currently have IB accreditation, and it is not a transferable designation. Closing Pinkerton would rip away the educational choice that so many families thoughtfully chose for their learners. IB elementary education has been shown through studies conducted in the U.S. and around the world to increase teacher engagement and collaboration, increase student motivation to learn, increase overall student well-being, increase positive school climate factors, among numerous other benefits. If Pinkerton closes, it most certainly would not be a trade-up option and would in fact diminish the learning environment for both students already at Pinkerton and the community at large by reducing educational choice in the district. In a district as well regarded as Coppell, offering school choice with different types of learning frameworks and evidence-based programs such as IB is expected. Even as a coveted district, Coppell faces a problem with attrition. The board has identified that one of the top concerns in CISD is transfers out to other districts and charters. One of the top 6 places we are losing Coppell learners to is the Uplift Charter Schools. They have 19 schools that range from pre-K to 12th, and every single one of those 19 schools is either already an accredited IB school or they are in the process of becoming one. Throughout the world, there's been an over 30% increase in schools seeking IB accreditation over the past 2 years. Coppell is and always has been an innovative district with schools at the heart of the community. We care about our students and are proud of what we as a community are able to offer them, but we will not see the attrition from Coppell schools stop if we close down choice programs that keep us competitive with other districts and charters. Coppell should be looking to expand its IB program so that it becomes a continuum from elementary through middle and onto high school. Eliminating a choice program would be short-sighted and detrimental to the educational environment of the district. As a Pinkerton parent, I would like to ask the board to reject any option proposed by the bond steering committee that would result in the closure of Pinkerton. Additionally, I would like to request the board put forth a statement addressing the following question. If Pinkerton is closed in the future, what is the district's plan to continue to offer the choice program of IB education at the elementary level? Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian.
All right, item number 3 is our actual agenda for the evening. President Cavanis is going to handle items A, B, and C since they are school board related, and then we'll finish up with D and E. So President Cavanis.
Thank you, Mayor Mays. So up we have our Coppell ISD strategic design and district highlights. I'm going to turn things over to our superintendent, Dr. Brad Hunt.
Well, good evening, everyone. We're going to share 3 items tonight. Our Coppell ISD strategic design and give some district highlights. We're going to talk about our community-based accountability system, or CBAS is what we call it for short. And then we're going to end with safety and security updates, as that segues very nicely into City of Coppell, as we have a great partnership with the City of Coppell in regards to several of our schools in Coppell City proper in relationship to safety and security. And so as we're transitioning to the next series of slides, I will share that we do have several of our team members here tonight. I won't introduce all of them, but they're all sitting around the edges. They will either come up to the podium mic or the microphone over by Dr. Biswas, as they are going to participate in this meeting as well to give some updates. We went through a strategic design process in 2017, and the result of that created 4 core values. We value each individual's contribution because success can look different for everyone. So the short version of that, we call that redefining success. And that really is where our CBAS document comes in, and you'll see a copy of that at your table, and then we have extra copies for anybody in the audience. I'll talk more about CBAS in a few minutes. We also value authentic relationships, since we want to make sure that we are establishing authentic relationships, student to student, student to teacher, teacher to student, teacher to teacher, teacher to parent, parent to community member, and so on and so forth. We understand and value the importance of authentic and real relationships. Our third core value is great teaching. We wouldn't be where we are without the great teachers in CISD. We believe in great teaching because we know it is the key to deep learning. We're very proud of the academics in our district, and we want to make sure that we continue to keep them as a focus. And then finally, we value collective engagement because we want to make sure that we are engaging with members of our community, as we know that this engagement can impact our kids not only today but also in the future. From that strategic design work, we created a new mission statement as well as our tagline, "You Matter." The school year is off to a great start. CISD is rated by the Texas Education Accountability System, or TEA, and we recently received an A rating from TEA. We're very proud of that rating, considering the past few years of the challenges that we have experienced with COVID, with some kids learning in person, some kids learning at home, the stress level on our students as well as our staff. So all of those things going into play and still coming out in A district is something we are very, very, very proud of. Very proud of our students, very proud of our teachers, and extremely appreciative of our parents supporting us in this process. We could not thank them enough for their support of this district as well. Part of the work of our state accountability deals with COVID Relief Fund, or ESSER, which is the Elementary Secondary Student Relief Fund. We did receive about $6 million from the state. Some of that funding went to closing the achievement gap, or focusing on unfinished learning or learning loss because of COVID. Some of those funds also went to, or is going towards social and emotional learning as well. But we wanted to make sure that our community was aware that that's how we've been spending that money, and also putting forth a lot of effort from our incredible curriculum team. Dr. Brooks is here, as well as Ms. Eichel. Dr. Brooks is our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, and Dr. Eichel is our Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services. And so finding the right employees to help us as we focus on student achievement, and then also training those employees and making sure they have the right resources is critical as well. You'll also hear a little from our Chief Financial Officer. She is here tonight also, Diana Surkar, and our Chief of Operations, Dr. Dennis Womack. And so one thing we wanted to make note is where we stand in relationship to districts around us. We rank number 4 in the districts in the North Texas area. Again, very, very proud of that. When you look at our size compared to the other districts, We're one of the largest school districts to receive an A rating in the North Texas area. Of course, we can't compete with Frisco. They're substantially have higher student enrollment than us, but again, just very, very proud of our students' hard work, and our teachers especially have worked very, very hard. We also know that we're in direct competition with our charter schools. Charter schools are really working to have an impact on our area, and so we want to make sure that our kids stay within CISD. And so it's important, I think, for parents as they're making decisions and looking at options, where do the charters stack up against public schools, and specifically Coppell ISD, where you can see that we are outperforming the charter schools in our area quite substantially. We have lots of points of pride. I'm only going to share a few. Two of our students are actually here tonight from the Sidekick. They are amazing covering this work tonight, so just want to recognize them. We've got a big group of kids right now down in San Antonio. Our band is competing. We're following them online right now. I'm flying down tomorrow morning to see them compete. The band, if you've not seen their show, we had a big send-off last Wednesday. They have done outstanding, and we are wishing them the best of luck as they compete right now. We have a graduation rate of 99%, which is huge when you think of the challenges that our kids have had, our community has had. To have that high graduation rate takes a lot of hard work and effort, and so we're very, very proud of that. Very proud of the senior class of 2022 that brought in almost $24 million in scholarships. Another big accomplishment. Very proud of those seniors. 31 national merit semifinalists for this year's senior class. Very, very high number. You can see our SAT scores, our ACT scores, our number of advanced placement kids from our students at both Coppell High School, CHS 9, and also New Tech High at Coppell. Very, very proud of them. Also wanted to talk a little bit about our financial transparency. So I'm going to ask Ms. Diana Surkar, our Chief Financial Officer, to come to one of the mics as we just talk a little bit about where we are with our first report and what we have recently received regarding financial transparency. So, Ms. Surkar, if you don't mind just giving a few updates on financial transparency. You have to press your button to make it green.
Good evening. The first financial transparency report that the state issues for all school districts, those final results have come out, and the district once again received an A rating for financial transparency. The district has received an A rating since that first rating system has been put in place, and so for 20 years in a row, an A rating. And in addition to the first report, we also host a lot of information on our website. There's a financial transparency website that you can reach right from the initial page on Coppell ISD website, and it has all sorts of information from our budgets to our audits to all of our transactions in our general ledger, in our general operating fund, and we also have additional information on bond spending and all of that. So lots of information on that page for anybody who's interested.
Thank you, Ms. Surkar. Before she leaves, any questions for Ms. Surkar about the budget? Thank you. I'm going to ask our Director of Communications, Amanda Simpson, to come to one of the mics. As I said, one of our core values is community engagement, and we want to make sure that we're engaging with our community. We've added several different events specifically related to engagement, and so I'll turn it over to Ms. Simpson for some updates there.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. We recently had our annual community tailgate. It was our most successful tailgate that we've had. We had more than 500 attend. This is one example of the events we do to engage with our community. We also have our Gold Card program. This is for people who live within our district boundaries who are over the age of 60. They receive a Gold Card and they can attend our athletic events and our fine arts events for free. We also recently provided the meal for the Coppell Senior Center's Fallapalooza event. And again, this is where we signed up more senior citizens for our Gold Card program. In addition, our campuses have events to engage their community. And I can tell you this year, with us being back full-time, these events have had a tremendous amount of attendance. Wilson Fest is just one example of an event. Most of our elementary schools also have family lunch on Fridays, and these events are packed. So it's really showing us that our community missed engaging with each other in person, and when we make these efforts, we can really engage with our community. And finally, we have our Heart CISD campaign. We continue this campaign to recruit and retain students and recruit and retain staff. We've done commercials for this campaign. Our current commercial has been viewed more than 40,000 times. It's a YouTube video. In addition, you'll all find at your area our Heart CISD car decals. I think when you're over the age of 18, stickers become decals, and so we have those available for you to put where you would like.
And we're real proud of the Heart CISD campaign. Like Ms. Simpson said, it's helping us not only focus on retaining our students, because we do know we compete not only with charter schools, but homeschool and private schools, and we want to make sure that our families that live within CISD or are also available through open enrollment stay within our district. And so we want to make sure that we continue to tout the great things that are happening in our district. But also it's the spillover is related to staff. We've been able to recruit a lot of staff members from our social media posts and our YouTube channel, and it's been a great way to not only retain our students but also focus on staff. We believe in the whole child in CISD, and so as I mentioned, we focus on social, emotional, mental health, which is an important part. We talked a little bit about fine arts already. Athletics is an important piece too, and so our kids have done very, very well athletically for our fall sports. All of our fall sports, including cross country, volleyball, tennis, and football, have advanced to postseason play. Cross country recently competed at the state level, and our boys took third in state, and an individual took seventh. And so very, very proud of all of our student athletes in their fall sports. Many are still in the playoff season. And so a little plug for Friday Night Lights this Friday. We have our first football playoff game. We're hosting here at Buddy Eccles Field against McKinney. It's at 7 p.m. And as the screen says, let's go Cowboys. We're excited about that playoff game. As I mentioned, our band is down in San Antonio right now competing. They have an exceptional show. If you haven't seen it, very theatrical, lots of props, but the music is really what steals the show. The music is amazing. So proud of our band kids, our band parents that help so much. We couldn't do what we do without all of our many, many parent volunteers. So thank you to our band and our band parents. As we get ready for the next piece, I'm going to ask Ms. Eichel to come to one of the open mics. She, as I said, is our Assistant Superintendent for Administrative Services, and she's going to talk a little bit about personnel, enrollment, and our job fair.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Good evening. Well, as Dr. Hunt said, it's a key aspect of our district to not only recruit but retain high-quality individuals throughout the educational organization. Of course, our teachers are where the rubber meets the road, and so we really look to find individuals that not only believe in students but buy into the core values, and through the interview process exude all four of the core values for our district. But in addition to teachers, we hire child nutrition staff, crossing guards, maintenance workers, administrators, because it takes all kind of individuals to keep the school district moving forward. Much like you may be experiencing throughout the city, it's a very, very competitive market as we're coming out of the pandemic. Work environments have changed outside of education with opportunities to work from home, to have jobs not only right in our backyard but throughout the country and even internationally, and so we're looking for ways to recruit and retain those individuals. Last year we reintroduced a job fair in the spring to get out ahead of the market, again to be able to recruit the best and the brightest, and we are already planning for that again this year. And not only is that a recruitment for teachers and educators, but it is for all of those positions that we had mentioned. We hold that at our Middle School West Middle School, and we found there was a real synergy in having employees from all of our campuses and departments under one roof. So maybe if one campus didn't have a particular opening that an individual was looking into, they could walk that individual over to another campus or another department where there might be a right fit. We continue to have openings throughout the school year, again in those support areas as well, quite honestly, as in our classrooms. Our enrollment this year, we have a snapshot date that the state takes the last Friday in October, and so that is just passed. And as of that date, we had 13,365 students in our district. That's up about 200 students from that same date or that same snapshot last year. And we attribute that to growth in our district through new individuals moving into the district. Also some return from COVID, where families are feeling more comfortable bringing their students back into the district. As Dr. Hunt mentioned, we do have an open enrollment program so that areas in the city of Coppell that are not zoned to Coppell ISD have an opportunity to bring their students into the Coppell School District. And we have over 130 students that participate in Coppell ISD through that open enrollment program, and that's continuing to grow. We're seeing some unique trends in enrollment, and our demographer, Bob Templeton of Zonda Education, will be presenting at our school board meeting next Monday, the 14th. And so I'd really encourage everyone to either come and participate in person or to listen in. We are seeing some things statewide that are really different than pre-pandemic, and they're impacting us in Coppell, but they're not unique to Coppell. Lower birth rates, for the ages of students entering school, so kindergarten and first grade throughout the state. Increased competition, as Dr. Hunt alluded to, with private, charter, and more families choosing to homeschool, again, because they have that opportunity because they're working from home. They can have their students or their children stay home with them and participate in some different activities. So we're really working through and with our community engagement and our communications team to understand the whys that families either choose to come to public schools or they don't, and really to market the great things that are happening. So again, I would really encourage you to either in person or online listen to that information next week. It's really going to be interesting.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Eichel?
Yes, if you don't mind. So we're all having trouble hiring qualified people. So, the teaching is a very specialty area anyway. So of the number year to year, how many teachers are you having to hire each year?
So prior to this past year, we averaged about 150 to 175, not just teachers, but employees each year. We have individuals that leave our district through retirement. We have some that leave through other opportunities for promotion because maybe the timing is we don't have those opportunities available in Coppell. But due to the pandemic, we're seeing more and more individuals choose to leave education as a whole. Again, either because of the increased demands of education. As we all see on the news, it is very polarizing and political at times about education and what's taking place in education across our nation. This summer, we ended up hiring close to 300 individuals, again, not all classroom teachers, but in any role to support us in the district. And again, that's because we've seen people leave education. We've seen individuals that have met the requirement to be able to retire, that had stayed in education for a number of years. But again, the increased demands of COVID in recent years have caused a number of our most experienced teachers to choose to go ahead and retire.
So I was at this thing sounds awfully live. I was at the new teacher orientation in the summer, and I noticed there was about 260 employees there, and I thought that was a high number, so that explains it. Are you stepping up your efforts in addition to the job fair to begin recruiting for next year, in early or in advance?
We absolutely are. As Dr. Hunt said, really everything we're doing to market the district is not only about families coming to the district for students, but for employees coming to the district. We're looking at compensation because although educators don't get into the field of education for money, with inflation and the cost of things, salary and benefits are very important. So we are in the middle of doing a very intensive salary study. We have and we remain competitive with neighboring districts, and we want to continue to do that. We're looking for some flexibility options not with teachers in the classroom because they need to be there with the students, but we do have some positions in technology and through special education, more of the individuals that do the assessments for students and the placement of students with some remote work. We're kind of stepping into that a little bit lightly, but we realize we need to be able to do that to remain competitive. Just being involved in different organizations throughout the city and the state allows us to get ahead of that, and we do have partnerships with different colleges and universities. We're also seeing an increased entry into education through alternative certification programs, and so we're working with individuals that maybe have the content knowledge and the experience in a field, whether it's CTE, so some of the industry fields, or some of our higher level math and science courses where they have the content experience, but they need support and help with the pedagogy and how to work with students and to teach students. And so we've really continued to step up those opportunities and our professional learning just in time with educators along the way. Our curriculum team has done an outstanding job of creating small group in-person trainings, but also a library of just-in-time resources and recordings so that we can provide employees the support that they need to be successful in their jobs.
Wow, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the updates. Question is, you mentioned 13,300 total enrollment, correct?
13,365 to be exact,
65.
as of the last Friday of October, but you know, it's been a week, so that may have changed by a couple of students between now and then.
Yeah, that's fine. That's a good number.
Yes.
Out of that, how many are proper 75019 versus outside of 75019?
You know, I don't know that answer off the top of my head, but that is something that I can absolutely find out. We do have 3 elementaries and 1 middle school that are in the southern part of our district that are either in Dallas or in the Irving area. So I'm looking at Jennifer Valine. She helps with student and staff services. Ms. Simpson may have that information.
Also, too, in addition, we have one of our employee benefits is you can bring your child to CISD if you are an employee. And so every employee that lives outside of 75019 is going to impact those numbers. And so that's been a great benefit for us because people like to bring their child with them when they're coming to work. They recognize the great education you can receive in CISD. And regardless of your position in the district, if you are a full-time employee, you can bring your child to Coppell ISD.
So Amanda Simpson did a great job of anticipating some of that information. So 57.7% of the students that attend our district live in the city of Coppell. 35% live in the city of Irving. 3% in the city of Dallas. And 3% in Louisville. That may not add up to 100% exactly because, again, as Dr. Hunt alluded, we do allow our staff members to bring their students with them, and so they come from all over the DFW area.
Thank you. I just have one more follow-up question. Out of this breakdown, do you have a number for demographic of the population at the school?
I am
think
guessing
it might
that's
be
in here
on
as well,
our,
yes?
No, I don't see it. We have teaching experience, but I don't see our student demographic. Our highest, it's on the website. Our highest is Indian, with almost probably 60% Asian. And then I think it's like 20 some odd percent is Caucasian, 14% I think is Hispanic, and then 8%-ish African American.
Thank you.
It was about 57% Asians.
And those numbers are based on last school year, and so the percentages are because Ms. Eichel alluded to snapshot that's taken in October, and so what we report is what we know from last year. I would imagine that those numbers are probably higher for Indian Asian as we see that population continue to grow.
Councilmember John?
Thank you, Mayor. Hey, thank you for the presentation with all the information. I had a question about you mentioned about how some of the students, because of COVID, whatever the reason might be, but one of the reasons was that they want to homeschool because they're working home and so and so and so. Do you guys have a survey as to those that decide to other than go to CISD, as to what the reasons are, and then if there are some issues that they're facing, do you have that list, and how do you go about, or have you addressed the issues that some of them might respond as to why they're leaving?
Sure. So our communications and community engagement team has done an excellent job of working with the campuses to reach out to families who have left our district or left during COVID and have not returned. And they've made individual phone calls to those families to understand, what's preventing them from coming into public education. Some of the reasons that were given, some we can't control. There are families that, for a variety of religious reasons, choose to pick a different option that we're not able to provide in the public sector. We have some families that up until this year continue to be concerned about COVID and the reopening of individuals. We have some families who have shared that they are enjoying the opportunity to provide education kind of in real life experiences, whether that's traveling our country or internationally, or being able to go to museums and the zoo and into the community to provide those experiences. We are seeing those decisions taking place with the younger children more so than secondary, being middle and high school. Because what they're not able to provide in the home environment in many cases are the athletics and the fine arts experiences, some of the foreign language opportunities that are available at the secondary level. And quite honestly, the curriculum continues to get harder and more differentiated the higher students go in grade levels. And so we tend to see if families make a decision other than public education at the elementary level, many times they are returning in 6th grade and beyond.
I'm used to having him right next to me. Councilmember Nevels.
I'm throwing you off, Mayor. Sorry about that. So, again, thank you for the presentation and the information. Appreciate it. As far as hiring in the district, I heard some of the numbers you said. How is Coppell ISD stacking up against other districts? Are we competitive with our hiring, and just in terms of attracting new people versus them going to other districts and stuff? Are we still faring well in that regard?
We are. We're very competitive when we look at salary surveys, not only at the entry level salaries that we pay for first-year teachers, but when we look at kind of those marker years, 5 years, 10 years experience, 15 years of experience. Some of the things that we would love to look at partnering with the city on possibly is, especially for our younger starting out teachers, just opportunities to be able to live in Coppell and work in Coppell. The home prices and sometimes some of the rent prices make that prohibitive, and so we have reached out to some businesses to be able to look for those partnerships, and we welcome any guidance and opportunity there. We're also looking for some of those non-monetary pieces, some flexibility where teachers, we have what are called work days before each semester, where in years past they've been required to be on campus all day long to prepare for the students to come, and we're giving them some opportunities to work remotely or be some flexible with those times where they're on contract but the students aren't present with them. Just like with that professional learning, even though we've returned to in-person, while some of that continues to take place, there are those opportunities, as I said, to do some things online and from their home as well. And again, we are able to recruit a lot of individuals with the ability to bring their own sons and daughters into the district to participate in the various programs that we have in Coppell ISD. So that's something we're always studying and continuing to look at to not only remain competitive with careers outside of education, which sometimes is a little bit harder, but definitely we are in a very competitive market for educators. And that's why when you see our job fair date is already picked for the beginning of April, there's a window of time where we can recruit experienced educators that are under contract with other districts. They can make a move essentially through the end of June. And so we have to get out ahead of that early to convince them to come here and bring their expertise to work with us, because the further we get into summer, they're tied to their current district or their current contracts. And so again, we're already starting to talk about it now. It's never too early.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that answer.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Ms. Eichel. As I said in the intro, we've spent since 2017 working on our strategic design efforts that morphed into our visioning work that Dr. Brooks helped lead during 2021. And then we had in 2019, 2020, a long-range facilities planning team. And so all of those work kind of bled into our next step, which is the process that we're in right now, which is our bond process, looking at putting a bond package together for the board to potentially consider for May of 2023. Community input's been very important to us throughout this entire process, and so we've offered several surveys. We had a futures conference last month. This week we actually have on November the 10th what we're calling a community dialogue. It's from 6 to 8:30 at New Tech High, and welcome any members of the community to that event. It's important for us to hear from our community. We've got a great bond steering committee that's been working already. They've got more work to do. No decisions have been made. They're still in the early work process, but again, hopeful to get something presented to the board in February or January for them to consider for a possible May 2023 bond election. I want to ask Dr. Brooks to come to the microphone for our next piece, which is part of our community-based accountability system. It's the brochure that you have in front of you. We sometimes put a one-pager in about the district at a glance that has the demographics on it, but we didn't do that tonight. But this is our community-based accountability system. We are very, very proud of our STAR scores and our end-of-course scores and all of our student performance, but we recognize through our core value of redefining success that our kids are much, much more than one test on one day. And so a community-based accountability system allows us to focus on 7 different pillars that align with our strategic design work and our core values. And these 7 different pillars are much more a holistic approach of where we are, where our students are performing, where we are as a district. It looks at other things that are not student related, but about our finances, our operations, those things that are important to community members as well as student performance. This is not only a district goal and one of my goals, but it is something that is a focus for all of our campuses as well as we look to move this work forward. As I said, Dr. Brooks and her team have been instrumental in helping us with this work. We work with several different school districts in the surrounding area with a group called Texas Public Accountability Consortium, or TPAC. You can see those are all the TPAC districts. There's over 50 in Texas that have been working with the Texas Association of School Administrators, or TASA. The school districts in red are part of our North Texas Consortium. We meet with them regularly to share ideas, collaborate, do some job-alike work, and it just really has helped us move our work forward. And so again, you can see the correlation between our 7 pillars of CBAS and our district core values. They align very nicely and relate very specifically to what we're doing as a school district. Last year we focused on 3, which is student learning and progress, again, because we want to make sure that we were closing those achievement gaps in the learning loss and unfinished learning related to COVID. Professional learning and quality staff. I want to ask Dr. Brooks to talk a little bit about what that is, and then we're going to hold off on safety and security with Dr. Womack.
Thank you, Dr. Hunt. Good evening, everyone. For the student learning and progress, we're really trying to look at a holistic picture. So when you're thinking about not only do we still want to make sure that we're looking at our state accountability, looking at our STAR scores, looking at our EOC, our end of course exams, to ensure that that is also a part of who we are and what we're doing, because that is still an accountability piece per the state. But more than that, what else are we doing as a district? How are we having some beginning of the year kind of pre-assessments or universal screeners that we're also using on our learners, so you're not just looking at an end of the year summative score within that. So when we're thinking through that, some of the tools that we use, NWEA MAP, which is actually a nationally normed, as well as it has state accountability kind of pieces within there too, that tie to how well our students may perform, kind of front-loading that to say, could they possibly do well on their STAR scores as far as at the end of the year when they're looking at that. We're also looking at some specific screeners that we use. We have some early literacy screeners as well as dyslexia screeners that we utilize as a district. And so a lot of different academic pieces that we're looking at through that lens, but also too, when we're thinking about student learning, how are we also looking at our social emotional needs of our kids? How are we looking at specific behavioral needs to ensure that all of those things are in place for our kids as we're going along as a district? So that kind of captures several things there. So as you're looking specifically at your accountability system at a glance, this is just a snapshot that you have here with this pamphlet, really to dig into some of those pieces and be able to see some of that. If you go to the district website, and we'll kind of talk about that link in a second, they're www.coppellisd.com/CBAS right there. But if you go to that, you can be able to see the dashboard that really digs in and talks specifically about some of the tools that we're using in order to have those measurements throughout the year. And once again, it's looking at accountability, and it's more than just that snapshot score that you have from the state. When you're thinking about professional learning and quality staff, you heard Ms. Eichel really speaking to what are we doing to ensure that our staff are meeting not only the standards for what they do within instruction, but how are they going above and beyond? How do they come in having a growth mindset, but what are we doing to allow them to grow themselves in whatever area it may be? So if you're thinking about specific content area, if you're thinking about things like digital learning skills and things that they may need, or even things like classroom management. When you think about a new teacher coming into a classroom and being able to not only have, how am I going to document for my children? How am I going to ensure that all of my children are meeting all of their needs for their academic, their social, emotional, and their behavioral needs? But how are we providing that training to ensure that if there's some areas of growth for that teacher, how are we providing those supports? So it really talks about that, as well as just having that high quality staff. We want to ensure that our hiring practices are not only well, but also too, once they come to us, how are we making sure that they grow? I think being here in Coppell for, this is year 22 for me. So coming in as a classroom educator, having the opportunity to learn and grow, to have leadership opportunities, to serve on district committees. I have gone through, I was a campus assistant principal and campus principal at Town Center Elementary for 7 years, and now in year 5 of the role as assistant superintendent. So knowing that, those were opportunities for me. So we want to make sure that we're helping to keep our educators here too by providing those leadership opportunities. So some of those are also highlighted within the dashboard that we have. And we're not going to hit safety and well-being, but definitely know when you're thinking about safety and well-being, that's not only thinking about safety at our campuses, but also to how are our kids feeling to make sure that they are included within that campus. Do they feel that they are important? Because you want to make sure you have that environment where they want to come and just strive to learn every day.
And so those were the 3 that we focused on last year. We're going to continue to focus on those 3, and then we've added 2 more. We did not want to stress everybody out by adding all 7 the very first year, and so we're easing into it. And so the 2 that we're going to focus on this year, in addition to the 3, are the engaged, well-rounded students and fiscal and operational systems.
Perfect. So when you're thinking about engaged, well-rounded students, you'll notice some of the things that we highlighted actually within our dashboard kind of fall into that category as well. You'll notice that these, even though you have separate pillars at times, and these were developed once again by the TPAC consortium, so other districts that are working through a community-based accountability system are also using these as kind of the standalone pillars to be able to target those specific areas. But once again, you could have highlights or areas of growth based on your specific district needs that you have. But within the engaged, well-rounded students, we want to highlight those things that our kids are doing within fine arts, within also too with athletics, within PE, within anything that our kids are interested in and doing, as well as some of the things they're doing outside of school. How are we giving them the opportunity to share? I'm looking at Kevin right now and thinking about some of the efforts that he's done with kids that I know that have gone through his specific program here in Coppell. How are we highlighting those accomplishments as well for our kids? And then, of course, the fiscal and operational systems, which we know Diana Sarkar earlier, our Chief Financial Officer, highlights a lot through our different board meetings. But how are we making sure that we are accountable within everything that we're doing in our learning organization, and that we're also being fiscally responsible? So thinking about that, that's a nice balance, and you want to make sure that you have all of these components when you're looking at overall growth within a district. And right now, once again, our state accountability standards that they have, yes, that's one area that they're looking at. They're looking at one snapshot. They're looking at star scores on a particular day of our kids. This is so much more, and that's what we want in our district, to make sure that we can ensure that we are moving ourselves forward in many different areas as well.
As Dr. Brooke mentioned, we do have our dashboard. In addition to this printed brochure, it's coppellisd.com/CBAS. You can see that it is much more comprehensive too than just our printed piece. We can update that on a regular basis. Our communications team did an exceptional job of putting that all together. We have a CBAS advisory group that we meet with on a regular basis that gave us some great input. We're very proud of that work. And again, it's much more comprehensive about who we are as a district and much more informative than just a one test, one day. So any questions for Dr. Brooks? All right. Oh, sorry.
Councilmember Nevels.
Again, thank you for the information. I really appreciate it. I just want to say, as a parent of Coppell ISD students, I just want to say thank you guys for all the work on this, because, as you said, that one test, one day, high pressure situation doesn't fully encapsulate how well a child is doing in their educational process. So I just want to say thank you guys for being very intentional about that, and just showing that, you know, it's not always about good grades. Good grades are great. We love that, but just that intentionality of really pointing that out and highlighting that different kids learn different ways. So I want to thank the board for all of that hard work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Brooks. Well, I keep getting updates from band. They're looking very, very well, sitting at the top half of finals, so that's very good. And then also, again, we focus on all areas. My son plays for Middle School North basketball, and they have their first game tonight, and he just scored. So I don't know if we're going to win or not, but we've won in our house because my son actually scored, so that's great. I'm going to ask Dr. Womack to come to the microphone. We're going to talk a little bit about safety and security updates. As Dr. Brooks said, that is part of what we've been doing with CBAS, but also CBAS piece includes the wellness part, which is more the mental health piece too, and physical wellness as well as mental. But structural and other parts of safety and security are paramount for us as a district. We've always taken that as a high priority. Certainly with some things that happen at the end of the school year, we want to continue to make sure that that stays a top priority. And so we've focused a lot on safety and security. So I'm going to ask Dr. Womack to give a brief update and also introduce our new coordinator of safety and security.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Hunt. We had the opportunity to go out into the marketplace again, and as Ms. Eichel originally spoke about, attracting and retaining quality individuals to work in the school district, we had the opportunity to hire Mr. Greg Alexander. Greg, if you don't mind waving. Thank you so much. Greg comes to us with 9 years as a classroom teacher, teaching law enforcement, forensic psychology, forensics in general, as well as 20 years plus in law enforcement. So a very unique background, almost a unicorn in the field, if you will, because of that dual knowledge track that he has, both as an educator and as a police officer. And so we're excited that Greg has chosen Coppell, and that we also chose him to come and work with us. As you think about safety and security in a school district, the first concept or first criteria is physical safety, is what most people think about. How are we physically securing our facilities and our students and staff? And so the things that we would typically put in place are to mitigate, are to help respond to deterring an individual or individuals or whoever or whatever from coming onto campus or wanting to do harm on our campuses. So the deterrence piece of it, and then the detection piece would be next. We definitely want to be able to detect as soon as possible any occurrence that may come our way. and then ultimately delay that as much as we can. And after those 3 steps, the deter, detect, and delay, we really need to have some type of training in place for our staff, because during those deter, detect, and delay steps, that's really when we roll into protecting our students and protecting our staff. And so these 5 icons you see across the bottom are the 5 responses, standard responses that all Texas school districts follow. And these responses will, in any event, satisfy the need to protect ourselves. And so we've had a great partnership and continue to have a great partnership with the City of Coppell Police Department on training our staff on all 5 of these, but also CRAZE training. That's the civilian response to an active shooter event. And as you know, through CRAZE, and I really appreciate the officers that come out and train not only our administrators, but each of our staff and our students through that process. We know we want to avoid, deny, and defend. That's the concept behind CRAZE. And so each one of these opportunities will address some portion of our response, whatever that response needs to be. If it's last Friday, if it was a tornado activity that we might need to respond to, then shelter there on the end that's in orange would be the appropriate response for that. When we do our fire drills, Chief, then that evacuate, that green one, is the one that we want to utilize. A lockdown is the one where we typically would, when we say lockdown, it's lights and out of sight. So that's just a reminder to our staff and students that we're in a lockdown situation. Secure. What that means is we're normal on the inside of the building, but we're not letting anyone in or out of our building. So there's something in the neighborhood, there's something going on, there might be some activity that Chief Barton says, hey, we need to secure your facility. Don't let anyone in or out for a moment. And then hold is you might think of that as clear the hallways. We want to hold the students in their classroom. We want to hold the staff in wherever they're at, so that there might be a medical emergency. Something like that. So those are the 5 standard response protocols that we use, and the training behind that is the key point that we want to be sure that we continue to train. We know that a staff that, just as we get in our CRAZE training, that to stop and be paralyzed even for a moment can be dangerous. And so we want to make sure that it's almost like a reactionary piece, that anytime you hear one of these 5 items, that we immediately respond in kind with the training that we have. So we continue to do that training. On top of that, we also take anonymous tips, and all school districts do anonymous tips. We just happen to use Stop It as our solution, and it gives our kids, our parents, the whomever, you see something, say something. And that's really what the anonymous tip line is all about. We want our staff and our community to be partners in that, because it's all of us. It takes all of us. It's not just if I'm a CISD employee or if I'm an SRO on one of the campuses. We really need all community members, parents and students, to work with us on Stop It, because most of the time our kiddos are the ones that typically have more information than anyone else, right? Whether it's through social media or whether they've overheard something. Give us that tip. Even if you think it may be small or minor or minute, we still like to take the tip and look at it, and then let us assess the level of severity that may be as a part of that. And at the end of the day, if it turns out to be nothing, we're better off for even looking at it and doing an after-action review, coming back and re-reviewing what happened, how it happened, and what our response was to it, and then how can we correct that or make any refinements to it to make it better. So that's a little bit about our safety and security.
Any questions for Dr. Womack?
Council? So, back in the dark ages when I was in school, we did the shelter and evacuate for fire and tornadoes type stuff. So, excuse me, I'm familiar with those. How do the students of today, I'm thinking 16, 17, 8-year-olds, 17 and 18-year-olds, how do they handle the lockdown secure? What's the attitude when you get into one of those environments?
That's a great question. And back in the Stone Ages, when we were getting under our desk to have a nuclear fallout, right? How did we react to that? It just became part of what you did, right? As you went through schooling. And so really at the early age level, going through a lockdown or even a secure, it's just part of the way that we train and we continue to train. To say that students originally or initially aren't somewhat fearful maybe at the front end really comes down to how well are we explaining the why behind what we're trying to accomplish or do. And when students, and especially their parents, understand this is a safety piece that really we don't want to have to implement, but when we do have to, that we can do it with fidelity and with quickness. And so I can't get in the head of a 7th and 8th or 8-year-old, but I do know that as it becomes more of a muscle memory than it is a one-time surprise, we don't seem to have many issues, especially with kids not wanting to follow what the commands are during that process. We seem to have a very high level of participation to that degree.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for the update. When you talk about physical security, you already comes to my mind. I know you have most of the schools are in Coppell, and Coppell CPD is in charge of that. Can you talk about the schools in Dallas and Irving? Are they consistent policies if an event to happen? And can you talk about that, please?
Sure. So for us, any school in the ISD are the same. So we all follow the same exact everything. The only difference in the 4 schools in the south end of the district is that we use the Dallas County Sheriff's Department to help us with our SRO roles there, our police enforcement there. That's really the only difference in there. Same drills, same concepts. We do gain a little bit of help, just like any other municipality would. If there's an issue at, let's say, Lakeside Elementary, we're going to have not just the city of Irving responding or the city of Coppell responding. We'll probably have Grapevine. We'll have DPS. You'll see that commonality through your mutual aid agreements at any one of our campuses. We do meet with all of our surrounding areas, and particularly with Irving and Dallas, and obviously our leaders here in Coppell, to make sure that we understand who has jurisdiction, who's going to take point whenever something were to happen, so that there's not any finger pointing or indecisiveness on an event. We can't afford to have that.
And I'll just say again how grateful we are to the city of Coppell for that wonderful partnership, not only with the resources, but also sharing some of that financial piece is huge. We don't have that same relationship with the city of Dallas and city of Irving, and so we're extremely grateful to have that with the city of Coppell, and appreciate that you all understand the importance of school safety and helping us in that regard. So thank you.
Councilmember Nevels.
Thank you, Mayor. So a question about a situation that popped up recently and just kind of tags along, but I know that we had I believe it was a lockdown situation at Coppell High School. It was like a week ago or something like that. And I actually had someone reach out to me specifically and say, because I'm on council, so I obviously know exactly what's going on, with the schools and stuff, but they're like, what's going on at the high school? And so my question really is the district getting enough support with communicating information to other community members that aren't necessarily parents or, aren't getting direct communication in emergency situations like that? Are we giving enough support from the city and things like that? If you wouldn't mind speaking on that, that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. To my knowledge, yes. We get tremendous support from the city staff, and it goes both ways, right? So our need to receive information is as helpful as your need or the city's need to receive information, especially when we have issues within a school environment that definitely has the potential to spill over into the community. We want to make sure that we continue to do that. But the short answer is yes, we do. Could it be better in some areas? I'm sure as we come across those opportunities, yes, we could definitely make that two-way communication street make it better. However, I'm not aware of any downfalls in of it as we sit here tonight.
I know you said, could it be better? If anything does come up specifically, we would definitely want to know that as soon as possible, because we want to support all efforts in communicating what's going on and making sure that the safety and security of our students are top priority. So thank you.
That's one of our big challenges when you have community members that don't have kids in CISD, and we want to make sure that they're informed of what's going on. So we will send information out to all of our CISD parents so that they're aware of what's going on. What typically happens is somebody takes that and puts that on social media so that covers some of those other groups, but that is an area that we're constantly looking at other ways to make sure that people stay plugged in if they don't have kids in CISD.
Councilmember John?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Just had a question about the tip line. This is actually geared not just towards students, but any members, right?
That's correct.
And when was this actually implemented, or initially?
Do you know when it was implemented by chance?
This specific one was 2.5 years ago, but prior to that, we had another reporting system. So we've had a reporting system in place for at least 6 years.
And how has it been working out as far as, I mean, I don't know if you know when they give the tip lines, whether it's a parent or student. Just wondering as to, well, how active the students have been, you know, with the tip line program.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And the tipster, if you will, can choose to identify themselves as a parent or student. Otherwise, they can be completely anonymous. Now, as a reader, we might be able to read through it and go, well, that they're using some slang language that might be more typical of a student, but it can be completely anonymous, whether it's a parent, student, or a community member providing the tip. How well is it used? I would say that we do receive tips. Depending on what's happening and how the frequency of whatever those events are, we tend to get some. I'll say over the last couple of weeks, I know we've gotten at least a handful, which is a lot for us. We typically don't have a high level of incidents that require someone to give a tip, but when we do, we want to be sure that our kids and our community members feel safe with providing that. And again, being completely anonymous allows them to be safe.
We also make sure that whatever we send out to our parents, we put on the website too. And so people that are really interested are going to go to our CISD website and see those emergency updates. And, you know, prior to Stop It, I know we've used Crime Stoppers. We've used other ways to make sure that we are finding out what's going on, because we want to make sure, as Dr. Womack said, if you see something, say something. It could be as, you know, serious as a student issue, or something along the lines of, you know, the water is on and it's raining outside. I get that a lot. So we just want to make sure that anything that's related, whether it's an emergency or a non-emergency, is getting addressed.
And one other point, Dr. Hunt, if I may, the relationship that our SROs build with our students is huge. A lot of times they will get information directly from students that will not come through the tip line. And it's because of the relationships that they have built, being visible, being seen, and walking and getting to know the kids. And I will tell you, bar none, the officers that you have in our schools do an excellent job at that. And so from a safety perspective, I would say they're probably our biggest, not only deterrent to misbehavior, but they also are that confidant that students can go to. And so that's very appreciated.
Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the information. I think it's good to know kind of what we're doing as a whole in the district and the partnership with the city and our police department, which we really appreciate. I guess I had a question. We talk a lot about, and I know this from having 2 kids in the school district, of fire drills, lockdowns, if there might not be something safe around, but evacuation, things like that. But how much are we doing about the communication around active shooters and the importance of making sure that doors are closed behind you, that you're not leaving them propped open? And because I see it from time to time when I go to campuses, right? Teachers, students, they're like, oh, someone's coming behind me, I'll just prop the door, whatever it might be, right? Like, and in most instances around the country, when things have happened, it's been never had it happen before. It came out of nowhere. And so what kind of training discussions, right? There's discussions at home, which I think are very important. But what else are we doing at school if that were to happen? And especially in situations where I think there's some differences in campuses. And please note, I am not advocating for cell phones or no cell phones in classrooms. So let's not make that, I'm not trying to go down there, but I know some campuses are different. And I know in at least one middle school, like phones aren't allowed in the classroom or they're left at the door. And in situations like that, kids have called and things like that. So just from the standpoint of communication, what do you do in that situation and how do you handle that? What are we doing around that type of safety education?
So that's a very good question, and actually helps lead into part of what the state has implemented, and that's our daily door checks. So we actually check our doors, all exterior doors, and the state will actually send out an auditor to come and check our doors. They attempt to breach the school or get into the school, and then if they're not able, they will come in through the front door, and then they will announce themselves, and then they will go with the administrator and check all the doors with them. We've had 4 of our campuses done that way to date over the last 2 months, 3 months, and they've all passed. No unsecured doors, no propped open doors. But you're exactly right. In years past, that has been an issue, and unfortunately, it's an issue that needs to go away. And so as we encourage our staff and our students about not opening a door, even if you know the person on the other side, we have a procedure. Make them go to the front entry. Make them check in through the front entry, just like we do every school. And so we need to be strategic and really just rude about it, of forcing people to go around. I know that the parking lot's a long way away, but you might have to actually walk around the building to get to the front entry. So we continue that. And really making it a point of, at the secondary level especially, not as much at the elementary level, of you think you're doing an adult help by opening the door for them, right? I mean, I was raised here in Texas. I know that that's the right thing to do, is to be respectful and to open the door for an adult. But we're having to retrain our kiddos on that's not the right thing to do. We want to be respectful, and that is, hey, go to the front entry. And that's probably the biggest thing that we can do to continue that safety and security. But back to your other question about how are we training our staff, and it really comes through that lockdown piece. It's over and over, and sometimes you might think, well, you guys are doing way too many drills. And I would just say that until it becomes a muscle memory, we're not doing way too many drills. And of those, all of those, we all did fire drills, right? I bet we can all clear this building pretty quick because we remember those fire drills. Until we get to that same point with lockdowns and are secure, then we have some work to do to continue that education. If you do notice a door propped, unprop it and close it. Make sure it latches shut if you're on one of our campuses, and then let us know about it. Report it to us. Make sure that we're aware. Do we have an issue with the door itself, physically, that we need to address? So I know that's a long-winded explanation. I hope I answered the question.
No, that was super helpful because I think it's just being part of the vocabulary, right? If you're going to say a fire drill, tornado drill, evacuation, there's also, it's not just about a dangerous situation potentially around the perimeter. It's potentially an active shooter drill. And I ask my kids about the drills that they do all the time. I think you're right. There's never too many drills, and I appreciate the fact that all of our school administrators and teachers take the time to do that. Because it has to be part of muscle memory. So I was just, again, wanting to know what we were doing in that respect, and again, appreciate all the efforts that are being taken and the continuous education that is being done for both our kids and our teachers.
One thing that we did add a few years ago is an email to parents after we had a drill, so that you can continue those conversations at home, as well as just knowing what's going on, because we don't want to scare a child, but we want to prepare a child. And our kids are really, really good kids, and our kids understand the importance of it. They take their directions from the teachers. They are able to follow through with these drills in a very serious manner. And so we want to make sure our parents are included in this process, so that email home just kind of helps tie up that piece. But any other questions for Dr. Womack?
Yes, we have Mayor Pro Tem Matthew.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to follow up to what Brianna just asked. Do we have an inconsistent policy about having phones in middle schools?
I do not know the answer to that. Dr. Hunt?
There's been several school districts around us that have been limiting cell phone use because it can be a distraction. It also can lead to some cyberbullying and other issues. And so we sometimes get that from parents saying, hey, y'all need to do that too. And we also get the same response like you said, oh, don't do that because I want to be able to be in close contact with my student, my child. And so we have looked at piloting different things. We've not done anything district-wide, but some campuses have limited. They do some, no tech time period, because what you find is as you walk around our schools, are our kids, face-to-face engaging, or are the, is their head down and are they in their device? And so we want to make sure that they have good social skills too. And so, each individual school is looking at doing some things, even sometimes during lunch. Hey, have a conversation with people and not just be on your phone all the time. And so we've not really done anything district-wide, but we certainly are looking at those as options as something we may want to do in the future.
So Dr. Hunt, maybe for clarification, sorry, really quick. So is each campus then able to do things differently based on their campus with regards to cell phones? And by all means, I don't need to be in touch with my child all the time. I'm just always wondering from the standpoint of, I always look for some consistency, because then that should be built into the training. So for example, if you've got a campus where, I'll start with this. I was always about no children should have cell phones until they were in high school unless they could purchase it themselves. And when my 12-year-old was able to purchase it herself, then I was proved wrong. But then the schools have different rules. And so when I say that is making sure that training, then that piece fits in. So for example, if at one campus it's that your cell phone is not with you, your person, or your backpack nearby, or whatever it might be, right? And it's left at the door, that in an emergency, what do? Do you go get your phone, or do you hide? And so that's what I want to make sure is included. I guess maybe that's really where my question was going, because there are differences amongst the campuses, I presume, or at least I know there's a difference, at least in the middle schools.
Yeah, so the rule of thumb is, in the way that we train, is that you leave your belongings aside, and I'm sure our police department friends will also tell you that when they evacuate us, they don't give us time to go pick anything up. That's beside the point. We need to get out or follow the commands as best we can. But when we're in a lockdown or a secure The last thing we want is kids on their phone. And there's multiple reasons for that. One is we don't want to overutilize or oversubscribe to our cellular network, right, during an event. We don't want kids to be pushing out information that's inaccurate or inflame anything beyond what's already occurring. So there's a ton of data on that piece of it, regardless of how a middle school or even high school may handle cell phones during the instructional day. When we go into this type of training, cell phones are put away. We don't need them out.
Well, that concludes the school district's portion of the meeting. I know that the safety and security topic was kind of put in the middle so that the city, if they had other pieces to add to it, so I'll turn it over to you all.
So, Chief Barton, did you have something that you would like to add?
Is this on? Really, that was a really good presentation. You said a lot of things that I would have come up here and said. I do credit our SROs. They do spend a lot of time building relationships, because that is the first line. And I can tell you story after story after story of times when students have approached our SROs, and not that it was going to be a big event, but you know, a child who's just needs some help or has some type of need, and they get them to the resource they need. I know an SRO stayed after school last week at the request of a student and a parent, and that student was going through some hard times, and he took the time to stay after and build that relationship. And so, I mean, I'm not bragging because they work for the city of Coppell, but I think every one of them are some of the best in the business. And I was an SRO, and I feel like I can say that with some expertise. Again, it's probably a little bit biased, but not much. They do a really good job. In terms of preparedness, and this is, you know, that's the worst thing that can happen to a community is an event in a school. And so we train relentless on that. During the summers, for example, this last summer, our SROs went and did specialized training in McKinney. The Coppell Police Department participated in active shooter drills with multiple agencies on this side of Tarrant County, because, as he said, when these events happen, police departments, we don't have to call and ask for help. They're just coming, and so we have to figure out a way to coordinate as resources are just showing up. So we work at it all summer long. We work at it all week long. They do a lot of lockdown drills. I think we average about 42 a year, and we can't do enough of them, and because we're not 100% every time, and but again, that's how we get good at it. And you know, we'll continue to work with agencies around us. I think we have a great relationship with the school district. In terms of communication, I know when things, you know, start to ramp up, you know, me and Mr. Hunt are on the phone, communicated almost immediately. To a point that he made about cell phones, I'll just use this as an example. So the lockdown we had at the high school the other day, it was a very short lockdown. It was enough. It wasn't we didn't know if it was a threat or not, but it was something that we felt we were concerned with because of the time of day, the direction of travel, the stories we heard. And so when we went on lockdown, we started receiving phone calls at the police department from parents. And what we would like to do is spend our time trying to figure out what's going on. We don't mind taking the phone calls, but we got several, and you know, turns out, you know, the threat ended up being nothing. But again, we do make those calls because it was. I'll be honest with you. When I heard what I heard, I was like, yeah, we need to lock this down. So, but it ended up being not a big deal. So, our SROs love working for y'all. They love the staff. The staff is great to work with, and again, I think just like everything else, this is a team effort by the city of Coppell and the Coppell Independent School District. Keeping our students safe is core to keeping the community safe. So thank you all for everything you're doing, and we'll keep bringing our best, and we'll stay committed to y'all's health and safety as much as we can. So thank you. Unless there's a question.
No, we just appreciate you too. And again, like I said, our relationship with the city of Coppell, in particular our school resource officers, they are outstanding. And we just thank you so much for what you do to keep our students and staff safe.
Councilmember Nevels.
Chief, I just wanted you to know that as my resource officer when I was in a senior in high school, I thought you did a really good job. So thank you very much.
We're not dating any of us here, are we?
Right. Thank you very much. Oh, sorry.
So my question is, when you had the parents calling in, was it about what the lockdown is about? Because I'm looking at a source of contact that the parents could go to at first point instead of the police department. Would it be the school, or would it be the police department? Or would it be a hotline that the parents can call to figure out what's going on?
Okay, I could barely hear you, but I think you asked me, what were they asking us when they called? And then was the follow-up?
Yes, so my question is, if they are calling the police department, did they not get the message from the school district? Or do they not get the information from the school? Because the first point of contact would be the school, correct?
So the question that the parent asked was, why is the school on lockdown? That's all they knew. Their son or daughter had texted them or called them and said, we're on lockdown. This happened like quick. I don't even think the school district or the police department would have had a time to communicate as fast as those calls hit us. And again, that's why when we're still trying to figure it out, we don't really have an answer. And that doesn't add to a parent's anxiety. And so I don't think it was a lack of communication. I think it's just, we know that when we train for an event, we understand the chaos that could follow, right? We talked about when we train, we understand that the cell towers are probably gonna all jam. And we're gonna have more difficult times communicating through cell phones. And but in this particular instance, I don't think it was a lack of communication. I think it's just the speed of the phone got ahead of us. So.
And those situations are a little tricky. The incident occurred at Andy Brown Park, so it wasn't on Coppell High School's campus, but it was close enough.
Right.
And so when the city of Coppell gives us that heads up and says, hey, you need to lock down your building, we've got to make sure that we put all that into place. So we did send our communication out pretty shortly thereafter, but we take our directives from you guys. We didn't want to send something too soon, or we didn't also want to send something before we had enough information. But when your child has a cell phone and they send something to the parent, then that's where I think those other phone calls come into place.
Yeah. And they're not unwelcome. I don't want to sound like, hey, don't call us. That is not, we're going to answer those calls. But parents need to understand that if you call us too early, we may not have answers. Because we make that decision really fast.
So will it be fair to say our message to our parents is hold on for a few minutes and wait for the communication, because here it looks like both the city and the district gives high importance to communication to the parents, but with cell phone connection being matter of seconds, it's advisable to wait for some proper communication coming either from the city or from the district before escalating.
Probably, but that's just hard for parents to do because safety is such a concern for all of us, and anytime any of those situations come into play, people go right to they go right to where we don't want to go, but you just, whether it's active shooter, that's not what the situation was, but that's what people assume, and so that's a tricky thing. But we're committed to getting our communication out just as soon as we possibly can, and in that regard, we did. I think Ms. Simpson somewhere around here, we sent ours pretty quick, just as soon as we could. 90 seconds.
By the way, I really appreciate, when you're getting the email, the text, and the call, I appreciate all of those. So thank you, because I know that there's been a lot of work that's gone into what's the best way to communicate, and you guys have made every effort to cover it across the board. So thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
I believe that concludes the school district part, so I will turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Thank you, sir. We're going to move on to item number D. This is our Vision 2040 update, and Ms. Leach is going to brief us on what has been happening.
All right, good evening. When the police chief sets the precedent that you stand at the podium, we all stand at the podium. So yes, my name is Tracy Leach, and I'm excited to be here this evening to provide a brief update to you on our Vision 2040 strategic plan. So I will go over a couple things in terms of just some context around the process to develop the plan, what we have done since that point when we have the adopted plan, and then I'll answer any questions that you might have after that. But the process to develop this plan, it was about 9 months, and I'm going to cover all of that in about 3 minutes. So clearly, it was a very comprehensive process. When we began the process, the City Council asked us to keep 3 values in mind as we did that. The first was that it be community-driven and data-driven. The second was that it be transparent, and the third, that it be inclusive. And so everything that we did, every step of the way through the community engagement process, kept those 3 values in mind. Part of what we did to ensure from a transparency standpoint that this was something that was a plan that was the community's plan, it wasn't staff's plan, it wasn't the City Council's plan, was that there was a executive committee of community members that were appointed that helped guide that entire process from stem to stern. And I'm very pleased to say that we have 3 members of that executive steering committee sitting here in this room. So Trustee Lee Walker, and then 2 council members, Kevin Nevels and John John, were members of that group. And they helped kind of make sure that the integrity of what the report showed was representative of where the community provided input. And so when we got to the end of the development process, it resulted in the 7 pillars that are on the handout that I provided to you. And I will admit to you, I have brochure envy because I see the CBAS printed materials there. The final report itself is 42 pages long. So we have no expectation that people are going to read 42 pages. But we actually did produce a very beautiful brochure that summarizes each of the pillars. Of those 7 pillars, we have 4 primary goals that are identified under each one of those pillars. And so this beautiful brochure, which I only have 1 copy of and realized today, because we printed them during COVID, at which point nobody was going anywhere. So we will be reprinting some. But all of this is available on the Coppell website, so coppelltx.gov/2040. And it does provide some really good information just at a glance about what is the plan and get to kind of know that. So it was approved in 2019, so the spring of 2019, and we really spent that first year getting to know the plan because it was very different from Vision 2030, which we had just concluded. And so there was a lot of time spent at the staff level to make sure that we were familiar with the context and the conversations that occurred that shaped the plan that was then adopted by council. We spent a lot of time with the council going through each of the pillars, all of the goals, and it was literally, we spent many work sessions where we went goal by goal to walk through each one of those to make sure that council had an opportunity to hear a lot of those conversations that occurred to develop this plan. We are now in our 3rd year of the plan, and essentially what we do, this is the document that is the foundation for everything that we do. Each January, the City Council goes through a prioritization exercise to identify the priorities that will shape then the staff work plan for that next fiscal year. And so we are actually in the 3rd year of that process. The work plan itself is also available on the 2040 website, and so you can see what the priorities are that were identified by the council for that year, and you can see then what the staff will be working on to further each of those goals and pillars in support of those pillars every year. I am really excited. So pillar number 1, and we aren't going to go through all of these pillars because we would be here for another 40 minutes, and I would be very excited to talk about it, but I know it's 7:30. So, but pillar number 1 really speaks to the core of what our 2 entities do in terms of how do we serve our community. And that's around establishing Coppell as a laboratory of learning. And so time and time again, we heard from the community that education was important. I moved here because of the schools to I stay here because of the schools. And so the partnership that we have with the schools is a really important piece of the work plan. It's an important piece of how our 2 entities work together to be better. So I do want to just highlight a couple things since the inception of the plan that we have done in support of that pillar number 1. So we have our Allies in Community program, which now has worked its way into our pilot program for our Youth Allies program, and that began actually this year. There are a number of if you're familiar with our water meter project, we partnered with students at New Tech and the high school to help us with some sustainability and data analysis to help us and help develop programming and materials to use that resource wiser using the data that the new meters would provide to each of our users. Directors for our community development, enterprise solutions, and public works met with and advised New Tech seniors regarding his capstone project for this year around sustainable energy and environmental conservation. Our finance department was host to about 10 students that were, to help educate youth on water sustainability through teaching water conservation, the water cycle, and using that customer portal for all of the data, which would then filter down into some materials for the elementary schools. And then Chief Richardson is here, and Life Safety Park is housed under the fire department, and Life Safety Park is one of the most active ways that we do engage with the community as it relates to partnerships and educating our community, and LSP routinely hosts a number of educational opportunities, whether that's CISD, we hosted them for an intervention services meeting where we had some staff members there. We do host, we had over 75 students for a local homeschool cooperative that hosted a meeting there. We have a number of different classes. We have CPR, so we're very proud of the programming and the partnership that we're able to engage, where anytime we can work with the students in the school, I know our team is always very excited for those opportunities. So at this point, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have related to our Vision 2040.
Well, first of all, I always like to take the opportunity to say what an incredible experience the 2040 planning was. I love to shout that from the rooftop. So council, thank you. It was an incredible experience from beginning to end, and something I think the community, we all really can stand behind. So great job on that one. And you spoke to it, and as I was looking at the pillar circles, you know, this is where I just think that there's such an opportunity for the joint, right? The togetherness of really engaging our students. As the mother of a 13-year-old who counts all the bike lanes, right? And when we look at our transportation costs, you know, as a school district, and how can our students walk to school and have those innovative transportation networks? I guess my question would be, how do we expand our engagement of our students in the Vision 2040? What opportunities do you guys see? How do you look at that? How can we help engage our students in the leadership opportunities, and then you know, actually developing these pillars? And I was just curious to get y'all's thoughts on that, because I think there's such opportunity for connectivity here.
And there are, so I know you asked that of the council, so I can maybe just hop in, and then, Mayor, do you want to take that, or would you like me to?
You're doing a good job.
Okay, wonderful. So I will say, so as we think about engaging more students to get involved with a lot of the things that we do, I will say through the process of developing the plan, all of the sessions that we hosted that were student focused were packed. And so I think there's some opportunities, whether that's around focus groups, whether that's around really specific projects where we want to get input. I think if there's an intentional effort around engaging with our students within the district, they will show up and they will have really great input for us. I know our parks department, which now is home for our library, they do quite a bit of programming, and so from the youth reps on our boards, we get some feedback from those team members also. But yeah, anytime that we had an opportunity to get student feedback, we were always really pleased with both the turnout and the quality of the input that we got.
Trustee Dr. Biswas.
Yes, so I have a question on the, on these pillars. And do you have anything that focuses on crime in the city of Coppell, car thefts and things like that?
Yeah, so we have a number of, so that is one of the areas when we say that we wanted a wholly community-driven plan. There were a number of things that were not necessarily front and center for our community. And I will tell you, as odd as it sounds, of all of the focus groups that we had, public safety is one of those things that the community just knows is going to happen. And so there was not, from an emphasis standpoint, a lot of feedback around we must have a very targeted public safety pillar, because it is something that the community expects. Our public safety teams do a really good job in terms of that response and meeting the expectation that we have within the community related to that. But to the point of everything we do should tie to supporting this plan. There is a foundation under which everything else lives, because if we don't have a safe community, then none of the things that are in this plan can happen. And so we do have a foundation that speaks to a lot of our internal service things. So whether that's our finance team and having a quality workforce, whether that's making sure that we're surveying our community to make sure that from a customer service standpoint that we're meeting those expectations, whether that's public safety and infrastructure, all of those things are accounted for in the foundation, because we just know that we've got to take care of that business, because that's the jumping off point for all of the other things that make the community great.
Trustee Sethi.
I have a two-part question. One is regarding the smart city approach. I know there were smart water meters done, which has personally helped me also. I've got a notice that there is a leak, so that was helpful. What other initiatives are done over there? And the second part is about innovative transportation, and specifically what's being done to make it more bicycle-friendly city, because that affects our students, and when they can just ride their bicycles and help us in transportation costs too.
Yes, so that's a great question, and one of the things that I actually failed to mention, because the Smart City Board was a creation of and a result and an outcome of this plan. And so the Smart City Board and our future-oriented approach to residential housing, we created 2 new boards to continue the conversation with the community around what should those things look like. So our Smart City Board, they've been meeting diligently for the last, I guess, 2 years now, and they actually will be making a presentation to council probably in the next quarter related to some of their recommendations. They've developed a portfolio in terms of future-facing initiatives. And they will be in front of the council, I want to say after the first of the year, to present some recommendations that they have in that regard. The second question related to the bike lanes, we do have a number of bike lanes in our community at this time. If you'll notice, a lot of the, whenever we're coming back through to do sidewalk replacements, many of those are now the much wider multimodal sidewalk and paths that allow for a more bicycle pedestrian existence a little more easily than some of our previous infrastructure allowed. Kent, do you want to, is there anything I left out?
Just the bike path along the Dart Silver Line connecting.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Okay, so Kent will be able to speak to the Silver Line path that is proposed to follow the Silver Line light rail, not light rail, Silver Line train that's coming through Coppell.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nevels.
Try to steal my microphone. Thanks, Mayor. I wanted to go back to Trustee Walker's question a little bit, and thinking about engagement opportunities, because I think that it's really important, and I'd love to see us create more bridges and stuff. You and I work well together, so it lends itself to that. But I honestly think that we should just go straight to the kids and ask them. And I don't know whether that's through surveying or but I mean, you said it yourself. The kids, they seem to know what they want more than we do. So if they can tell us what they want, maybe we can build those, actually help create those opportunities. And I'd also love to continue to leverage strategic partnerships with our partners like our Chamber of Commerce, with some of our big businesses here, to potentially leverage some opportunities as well. So that's where I see, and I'd love to facilitate in any way possible. So I don't know if we want to maybe talk offline and continue figuring out how to create those relationships. I'd love to work with you on that.
Councilman Nevels, that sounds great. And
awesome.
Because a follow-up question was, on all of these smart pillars, I know there are boards, and on all of those boards, is there student involvement in some way?
We do have youth liaisons on our library board, our parks board. Is that it? Library board and parks board.
I think this facility too. I remember I submitted some names for the fine arts something. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a teen board
Oh,
here as
yes,
well.
separate group. But yeah, I know that our kids are always looking for opportunities. They've got many gifts to share. Just like our core value, redefining success, they want to be plugged in. They've got a big heart for service. So anything that our kids can do, I know they'd like to be involved.
Councilmember Hinojosa Smith.
Thank you. So I'll follow up to Trustee Walker's question and then wanted to go to Trustee Sethi. So I think the first one is you and I were at New Tech recently, and I know there's been a lot of collaboration with New Tech and our teachers, but and I know I brought along several of our staff members, including Tracy Leach and Mindy Hurley recently, and there was some opportunity there, right, where we were like, we'd love to engage students in some of these projects that they're putting together, which are actually pretty phenomenal, that we can take those ideas and maybe leverage it across the city and the school. But one of the things that I heard from the teacher who had that particular class was he didn't know who to reach out to, right? And so he had reached out to myself because, and the school district, but he had reached out to me because he knew who I was because of my son. So I don't know if there's maybe an opportunity for us to put some information, something that we give to our teachers to say, like, here's our city manager, deputy city manager, council members, if you have projects that your students are presenting on, so that we can go and listen in. And because I think those are leadership opportunities, right? They could lead to a potential summer internship or a job shadowing opportunity, and not just our boards and commissions, but I mean, there's ways for us to think outside the box. And I think sometimes maybe our teachers don't know who to go to, or maybe don't think maybe that we're all accessible. And so I don't know what's the best way to bridge that gap, but would love to look into that. And as far as the smart city board, so, our smart water meters, which I'm glad were helpful to you. I hate that you had a leak, but I had one too, so I totally get it. It was very helpful. That came from our staff members who were extreme, like Kim T, which was very passionate about this project, and I was glad that we implemented. I will say, it's been 2 years. I'm excited to hear our committee come back with, our board come back with some ideas. Just know that we've really been challenging them to think outside the box of what does a smart city look like? What does that mean? And what are things that we can do to be a leader in this space? Because other cities do look to Coppell, but rather than be reactionary, how can we be proactive, right? And so I think maybe after that, there might be opportunities for also collaboration with the school district to say, these are things that we're looking to do, and how can we partner in maybe implementing them as well. So anyway, I know it's been 2 years, but I think a lot of it has been that they've been trying to think outside the box of what that looks like.
Will eagerly wait. Thank you.
So I'd like to add something to Councilmember Hinojosa Smith's comments. One of the things that we've challenged them about is this is not about next year or 2 years down the path, but it's the future. It's the 20-year plan. So there's a lot of things, especially that are easy to talk about, and Kent can talk about transportation, but you get into what can we do transportation-wise. Well, we're really challenging them to look for the future. So, the short-term, the low-hanging fruit is really not what our committees are about. Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. Sort of piggybacking on what you were talking about in Kent's world, where it's a lot of infrastructure that we're talking about. So these really are long-term plays. And, as we touch new streets and we touch new sidewalks, trying to find ways that we can connect our neighborhoods. I will admit that sometimes I think our neighborhoods are sometimes isolated and they're walled off, and there aren't sometimes bridges between the neighborhoods. And so as we're touching new infrastructure projects, which come very slowly over many, many years, but having those opportunities to try to overlay what might some connectedness between these neighborhoods or to the schools look like might be a new approach or an enhanced approach to the way we look at infrastructure now. So just a thought.
I wanted to follow up with something that Trustee Beeswas was asking. One of the things about the policing is if you take a look at the second pillar, which is foster an inclusive community, the policing fit in more in that area. And if you listen to Chief Barton, he's very passionate about the community-based policing. And if you take a look at the way that our police department is operating, and we've been talking about our SROs for quite a bit of time, that is a perfect example of the way that we see the police department working with the community. Our National Night Out program is another example. So even though it wasn't called out as a particular pillar that Tracy was talking about, it's very deeply rooted in there and certainly not going to be forgotten or neglected. So, anybody have any other questions?
I had a quick question about the future-oriented approach to residential development. Can you talk a little bit more about that in context of the conversation that's taking place this evening? I know we talked about, ways to engage and bring more young teachers and families into the community, but obviously cost is prohibitive in many ways. But what are some of those thoughts?
Yes, so that was an area when we talk about robust engagement through the development process for the plan itself. We got a lot of interest around housing and what is the future of housing in Coppell? What should that look like? We know what we have today, but what will our community need? What will our community want by 2040, right? And so the pieces that really came out of that were kind of almost on opposite ends of the spectrum around if I'm a first-time home buyer with a family, and then if I'm a senior. And so what do those home options look like? When we created the board to continue that community conversation around making recommendations to the council on what should be the next step forward, the focus really was around the 55 and over housing. So if I'm going to live in Coppell, and we are a community for a lifetime, and I want to stay even though maybe my children have graduated and are no longer in the Coppell Independent School District, what should that be? Knowing where we are from a build-out standpoint, knowing where we are from a location standpoint, which is wonderful, but it creates the value of the dirt itself is very expensive. And so then how do we get the housing that the community says it wants? And so there were a lot of opinions. Whenever you have that kind of engagement, there were a lot of opinions about what is the right way in which to go about that for our community, because there's a lot of ways that we could provide homes for our folks who are over 55 residents who want to stay in Coppell. And the purpose of the board and really their first charge is around developing a recommendation that will help us solidify and identify what that path looks like for our 55 and up population that wants to stay here in our community.
Any other questions for Ms. Leach? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor.
Going to move on to item E, which is existing and upcoming construction projects with Mr. Kent Collins, who has the pleasure of telling us about how many more belt lines we have to go. Sorry, didn't tap.
So being last on the agenda, I worked hard and got my presentation down to about 2 hours. So, no, just kidding. It'll be quick. So good evening, Kent Collins, Director of Public Works. I'm going to go through some projects tonight, and I'll start off by saying that at the staff level, we communicate with your staff regularly about our projects and impacts that anything we're doing might have on a day-to-day basis with your transportation system, so that you can share information out to the parents for drop-off and pick-up, all those things. I know you've seen that in practice. It's something that we do. So we have a really good working relationship with the school district staff. I'm going to go ahead. So this slide highlights several projects that we have going on. Let's see. The pointer doesn't work on our screen, so I'm actually going to use it tonight. I'm going to start with the big project that we have going on. Everyone's familiar is Beltline Road. It stretches from Southwestern down to LBJ. And in fact, we are in the middle of a big traffic switch. So this is our first milestone. We are flipping traffic over. We've got one lane or one direction switched to the southbound lanes. Tomorrow, the northbound traffic will also switch over to the west side. And then our contractor will flip over and start work immediately on the old northbound lanes. So big milestone happening. Yeah, big. If you've been out there, I drove down this afternoon, and it was moving pretty well considering they're in the middle of a switch. But we have a really good contractor. I'll say that we're on pace to finish the project in summer of 2023, which was the original schedule. It's a $20 million project. You'll notice that the far south end of the project we've kind of left alone. That'll be the very end of the project. So they'll flip over, do the northbound lanes, and then at the end they'll come back and knock out that last about 600-700 feet in multiple phases. As you might expect, we're very concerned about the traffic through the LBJ interchange. So we're handling that, trying to keep traffic moving throughout the duration of the project. We've got a number of residential projects that we have going on. If you're in the Plantation area, we just wrapped up reconstructing Plantation and Mossy Oak. Woodhurst will be next, which is kind of on the east side of Denton Tap, about directly across from Plantation. And I mention it to say that if, again, we coordinate with transportation and let all the residents know. So if that's part of your normal route, it should not be while we're under construction, because they're difficult, they're high impact projects, and they don't impact a lot of people, but if it's your route, you've got to find another route when we're doing those projects. I've got on there, let's see, got Southwestern. This is on our schedule. So this is between South Coppell Road and Freeport Parkway, and it is, let's see, it's this one. It's in bad shape. We've done a little bit of patching here recently to get us through to where we can get to 2024. So that's about at 2024 is on our schedule. We need to get through Beltline, and we also need to rebuild Royal before we do that piece, which is the next project I've got highlighted. So Beltline is about a $20 million project. We've got Royal in at about $19 million. It's in design right now. And the schedule is, as soon as Beltline's finished, we'll flip over an award and start reconstruction of Royal. Usually I start this presentation by saying if you were here in the 80s and 90s, you know why we're rebuilding all of our roadways, because they were all built in that time frame. So they have a 30 to 40 year lifespan, and they're all failing at the same time. So we're in rebuild, reconstruct, maintain mode on all of our streets. And then let's see, I want to mention our intersection improvement project, which we're so close to finishing. Actually, so we've just opened Denton Tap at Bethel School, which is really nice. If you're used to driving through that intersection, now we have, for the eastbound and westbound, we have dedicated right, through, and left turn lanes. So previously we had to operate those as split phase, so you had to go eastbound and then they'd stop, and then you go westbound and they'd stop, and then you do Denton Tap. Now east and westbound can run together. So much more efficient and safer. So nice to have that open. We have also the intersection at Southwestern. That's been done for quite a while. We added a southbound right turn lane at Sandy Lake. That's been open for a long time. We did a lot of work at Parkway. It was kind of painful to go through. All of these projects are difficult because there's utilities everywhere on these corners. That's been done for quite a while as well. If you drive through 121 and Denton Tap, we encountered a utility conflict that we did not anticipate. We had an ownership issue with the power meter at that location, the electric meter. TxDOT owned it. They said, we don't want it. NTTA didn't want it. It should be in Louisville's ownership. So we had to go through that ownership transfer. Now we're just waiting on Encore to relocate that. Once it's out of the way, we've got a few weeks of work left, and then that'll be done. Everything's poured up to the point of that conflict. So there's some signal work done, a little bit of concrete work, and then that location will be finished. I drive that regularly, so every time I drive through, I'm like, come on, you know, get out of the wrong way. So yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to highlight is there's a project down here scheduled to start construction in about 2025. This is a multi-agency project. Coppell is part of it, but actually the city of Irving is the lead on it in partnership with TxDOT, NCT COG, Cypress Waters a little bit, that development group, and the city of Coppell. And the main project is to add a Texas U-turn, a new bridge for the westbound to eastbound movement, so that U-turning traffic. And then there also, I will say our contribution was the existing bridge deck. If you look at it, it's this photo up here. These lanes heading southbound don't align with the lanes on the bridge. There's a wide center median that serves no purpose other than to get in the way of proper alignment. So our contribution was, can we scrape that, redo the bridge deck, rebuild that, restripe it, and get it in a better configuration? So that has been incorporated into that project. And then we're doing some things on the north end with our Beltline reconstruction project that will also feed that project. The question of trails was brought up. So when we rebuilt Freeport Parkway, we added a trail. It was on the city's trail master plan. As we're rebuilding Beltline, we're adding a trail, again, on the city's trail master plan. So I say that to say, if you want to know where we're going to build trails in the future, the city does have a good trail master plan. It's out there. There's some on-street bike lanes. We're actually in the process of restriping a couple of those right now. So there is good information out there on the city's website if you want to look and take a look at that. Let's see. Now, I'm the city's point of contact for DART, so I'm going to go through what I know as an update to DART. If we get into the weeds, I'll have to direct you to their website, which I'm going to lead with, and it's dart.org/Silverline. So this is the Silverline project. It is a 26-mile project, almost $2 billion, 1.9 and change. It's a design build project, which means they're designing it right now as they're building it. So as soon as they have something designed and ready to construct, they go start building it. So they've got stuff going all along the alignment as we speak. In Coppell, probably the biggest impact is they're building the bridge over South Beltline Road. Kind of aligns with Sanders Loop in that area. You can't miss it if you drive that area. They're also doing a lot of work along Southwestern. They're rebuilding. They have an arch culvert section replacing the old bridge over Grapevine Creek. It's kind of south of Southwestern. So the schedule, the overall schedule, they still plan to start revenue service, at least according to their website. I'd question it a little bit at this point, but we'll see. The official time frame is the end of last quarter of 2024, revenue service, Silverline. So that is not very far away. They have a lot of work to do between now and then. They are working on the rail subgrade for the station, the Cypress Water Station. I should have pointed out that we're really talking about the CB1 alignment, right? That doesn't show up very good. This is where, so the new line dips down, and this would be kind of in the area where Beltline and Denton Tap cross the alignment, or the alignment crosses them. The freight will stay on the old alignment to the north. The passenger service dips to the south. This is the station location. It's on the south, it's just south of East Beltline, east of Denton Tap. That's confusing. So anyway, that's the alignment. Let's see, ongoing activity. I mentioned the work at the station. They have a lot of vegetation clearing out there. The questions we get, hey, they're ripping out trees, taking down trees, they're grading. That's what they do. And they are doing the work within their right-of-way. They do have a wide right-of-way. They're working on utility relocations, which is something we have to do on all of our projects as well. They're doing a lot of drainage work, work on the arch culvert I mentioned, and let's see what else. There was a community meeting back in July. They hold pretty regular construction updates. We get a weekly update on construction. So if you ever have a question on what's going on, feel free to reach out to me, and we can fill you in on what's happening. Their website they do a good job of keeping it up to date. They have a whole team of people. The only job is to coordinate and communicate with the communities, and they do a really good job of that. And they have some really good current renderings and views of the station and what that's going to look like. It's a center platform station, so there will be a rail on each side of the platform. That's what that means. Yeah, and the last thing I would mention on this is that we are working with them and COG to build the Silver Line Trail along the alignment. That would connect into the Campion Trail that then goes into Irving. So in terms of regional connectivity, that's part of the regional Velo Web, and so we're working with them on that piece. So one of the questions we get is, what about noise, right? Because we're going to have a lot more trains coming through Coppell. So one of the things we're working with DART and Archer Western on is establishing quiet zones at all of the crossings. So now, right now, when a freight train comes through Coppell, they're required to sound their horn at every location. The quiet zones will eliminate that unless it's an emergency. Obviously, if they see something on a track, they're going to sound their horn. But outside of that, there are improvements being made at all of those intersections to create quiet zones at all of those locations. Initially, they were not going to at the freight location, because when the passenger rail goes over South Beltline, it'll be in the air. That's what they're building the bridge. The rail will stay at grade, so they were not going to make that a quiet zone. They've changed that. That's going to be a quiet zone as well. And then the last thing I'll add is that just west of South Beltline, along the alignment, they're creating a new siding. And that's basically a stretch of extra rail where they can pull off and exchange vehicles or cars. So a train, and this is specifically for the freight trains. They can drop and add and switch engines, the locomotives, and then the existing just west of South Coppell Road on the north side, they're creating a small vehicle or car storage rail. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Trustee Bentley.
Thank you. And I have to say, when I did Leadership Coppell, the day that we spent with you guys doing all the infrastructure was actually my favorite day. So I hope you guys are still doing that with the chamber running that. So my two questions are really related to safety. So Beltline/635, the U-turn, the bridge, all of that. Like, how long do you guys, and I know that's a little further out, but we move a lot of kids from the south side of the district through that area. So what kind of timeline do you think you guys might be looking at on that one? That's my first question.
So it's scheduled to start construction in 2025. It's not nailed down any more than that. TxDOT's working on design right now, but they have, As you might may or may not know, it has federal funding. It's in TxDOT right of way, so they have to go through it. So once they get to like 60% plans, they will start the environmental clearance, and that takes a solid year. And so it's going to be 2025 before they start, and it's probably a 1.5 year long project, maybe a little longer.
Okay. And then my second question, with DART, we're going to be encountering something we haven't in this community before with all the passenger trains. And so I specifically think about over by Pinkerton, would we have cross guards? Like, what are kind of the safety things that are being put in place with, we want our kids to be mobile and we want them to be pedestrians and bike riders and all of these things, but DART, in my mind, does pose a challenge we haven't faced before. So could you address that a little bit, please?
Yes, and it did come up in the community meeting. That was one of the questions. So first of all, crossings need to happen at intersections. There will be gate arms for passenger vehicles and for sidewalks and for trails. So a pedestrian will know when it's safe to cross, when it's not safe to cross. And DART does and offers a lot of education to the students about safety along rail alignments. I don't know that we've gotten to the idea of crossing guards, but all of the mechanics for crossing safely will be at the intersections. And it's against the law to cross at a non-intersection.
Right, and I'd like to believe that no kid or teenager ever would do that. However, so is there a point in time maybe where the city and the school district would have a conversation about crossing guards? Because it doesn't seem critical until it is, and I'm glad. I assumed the mechanics were going to be there, but really part of my concern is if we're worried about major streets, this seems to me to have at least that much weight or more.
So could you help us understand, are you talking about down along Beltline and Denton Tap?
Well, I'm thinking specifically, cross guards we have pathways underneath Denton Tap, for instance, for the kids that go north. Like we've done things to hopefully minimize something happening on one of our major streets in the city. But I think about like the kids in Old Town that might want to walk or ride their bike to Pinkerton. They're going to be crossing the train tracks 2 times. And with a lot more frequent trains from what I am understanding. So I guess I'm thinking, does that not pose, a similar type of safety concern as some of our busier streets do?
Worthy of discussion. I don't think anybody had actually thought of it that way. You're right, there will be 2 crossings there, won't there?
There'll be 2, and it's elementary kids. Like, I'm glad the mechanics I knew were gonna be there. I grew up near a train track, that I wasn't worried about. But I know, kids don't always make good decisions, right, as much as we want them to. And the education, I think, already what we've seen from DART has actually been really excellent, it seems. But I worry about those 2 times a day and us having grade school kids potentially going over there and crossing the tracks 2 times.
Can we put that on the next agenda to discuss with DART and see what they have to say?
We won't wait for that.
From there.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nevels.
I just had a quick question. If we had any idea of the schedule that the Silver Line would be running, and because obviously I would think that the schedule would impact, the need or necessity for those and obviously the safety and security of the students that are trying to get to school are very important, but I know there's a lot of factors that we'll have to consider in that discussion. So
I believe it's 30-minute headways in each direction. So.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council or board, any final comments or questions?
Alcini, but I want to say thank you guys for hosting. On behalf of the board, thank you for hosting us here at this great facility, and it's always nice to get together with you guys.
It's always a pleasure to be at home, so thank you very much. Council, I feel like I'm really echoing in here.
Sorry.
So is that what it was?
Yeah,
Okay.
both are on, yeah.
Wow. So anyway, thank you very much for coming out. All the presenters, thank you very much for the preparation and all the work. It's been I know that we had a lot of trouble getting schedules together to do this, so thanks for everybody coming together tonight. We definitely need to do these at least as frequently as we've been doing them, which is, and we'll make sure that we put this on the docket for next year early on. And as Tracy was talking about, we do have our major planning retreat in January, and so that'll kind of set the 2024 agenda, and that'll be what we'll be talking about next time. So anyway, thank you very much. With no further business before this council, our board, we are adjourned at 8:14 p.m.